This story is inspired by real events and documented moments from Amy Winehouse's recording process. Some scenes have been dramatized to capture the emotional truth of her perfectionism and vulnerability in the studio. Take 47. The engineer's voice came through the headphones. Gentle, patient, exhausted. Ready when you are, Amy. Amy Winehouse stood in the vocal booth at Creative Space Studios in downtown Miami. July 2003, 19 years old, recording her debut album, the song that would introduce her to the world, Stronger Than Me. A song about weakness, about needing someone to be stronger, about the unbearable weight of being the strong one all the time. She'd been recording for 8 hours, 46 takes already. Each one was polished steel. None of them carried the weight she needed. The producers wanted to move on, said they had enough, said any of the last 20 takes would work, said Amy was overthinking it. But Amy couldn't move on, couldn't accept good enough, couldn't release something that wasn't true. Because Stronger Than Me wasn't just a song, it was a confession, an admission, a vulnerability she'd never spoken out loud. And getting it wrong felt like lying. Gary Noble, the engineer, watched Amy through the control room glass. He'd worked with hundreds of artists, recorded thousands of songs, but he'd never seen someone struggle like this. Not because she couldn't sing it. Amy could sing anything. Her voice was extraordinary. 19 years old with the control of a veteran, the emotion of someone who'd lived 3 lifetimes. The technical part was easy. Amy nailed the melody on the first take, hit every note perfectly on the second, added the jazz inflections by the third. But something was wrong. Something Amy couldn't articulate, couldn't explain. She just knew it wasn't right yet. Producer Salaam Remi sat at the console, patient but concerned. They'd been working together for months, building the Frank album track by track. He'd learned to trust Amy's instincts, but 8 hours on one song was pushing it. Amy, Salaam said gently through the talkback, the last take was beautiful, really beautiful. I think we got it. Amy shook her head, couldn't even speak, just shook her head and gestured to start again. Take 47. The music started, that familiar jazz intro. Those chords Amy had written on her guitar in her Camden flat months ago, back when the song was just words in a notebook, just feelings she couldn't say out loud. Back before she knew she'd have to perform this vulnerability for strangers, Amy opened her mouth, began singing. You were the one that I always leaned on. Her voice was perfect, control flawless, tone rich and warm, everything technically correct. But 3 lines in, Amy's voice cracked. Not from strain, from emotion. She stopped singing, pulled off the headphones, walked out of the booth. Gary and Salaam exchanged looks. Concerned now. This was a collapse, a breakdown of the ice wall she kept up. Amy walked into the control room. Her eyes were red, hands shaking. She sat down on the couch, didn't speak for a full minute. I can't do it, she finally said, her voice small, broken. You're doing it perfectly, Salaam said. Your voice sounds incredible. That's not the problem, Amy whispered. Then what is? Amy looked at him, really looked at him, and Salaam saw something in her eyes he hadn't seen before. Raw pain, deep shame, the kind of vulnerability that hurts to witness. This song, Amy said slowly, is about me needing someone to be stronger, to take care of me, to be the man so I don't have to be strong all the time. Salaam nodded. Yeah, that's what makes it powerful. But it's pathetic, Amy said, the words coming faster now, desperate. It's weak, it's needy, it's everything I hate about myself. Amy. Every time I sing it, Amy continued, I hear how desperate I sound, how weak, and I hate it. I hate that I feel this way. I hate that I need someone that badly. I hate that I'm not strong enough to be alone. She put her face in her hands. And every time I try to sing it, I'm trying to hide that, trying to sound less pathetic, less needy, and it comes out wrong, because I'm lying. I'm trying to sing about weakness while pretending to be strong. And you can hear it. I can hear it. It's false." Gary had stopped pretending not to listen. Salaam had gone completely still. "So, what do you need?" Salaam asked quietly. "What would make it true?" Amy looked up, tears on her cheeks, mascara running. "I need to stop being ashamed. I need to sing it the way I actually feel it, which is scared and small and desperate." "So do that," Salaam said simply. "I don't know if I can," Amy whispered. "Why not?" "Because then everyone will know. Everyone will hear how pathetic I am, how much I need someone, how weak I really am underneath all of this." She gestured at herself, the vintage dress, the beehive hair, the carefully constructed image of a girl who had it together. "What if that's the point?" Gary said quietly from his chair. "What if that's why people will connect with it?" Amy looked at him, surprised he'd spoken. "Everyone feels like that sometimes," Gary continued. "Everyone needs someone. Everyone gets tired of being strong. If you hide that in the song, it's just another jazz song. But if you show it, if you let people hear how you really feel, that's when it becomes something else, something real." Amy absorbed this, thinking, processing. "You want me to sound weak?" she asked. "I want you to sound honest," Gary said. Salaam nodded. "That's what's missing. You're singing the words, but you're not letting us hear the feeling. You're protecting yourself, and I get it. It's scary. But protection kills art. Vulnerability makes art matter." Amy sat with that for a long time. The studio was quiet except for the hum of equipment. Outside, Miami traffic passed. Life continued. But in this room, time had stopped. "Okay," Amy finally said. "One more take, but I need you to promise me something." "What?" Salaam asked. "If it's terrible, you'll tell me. If I sound too pathetic, too desperate, too weak, you'll tell me and we'll figure out something else." "Deal," Salaam said. Amy stood, walked back to the booth, put the headphones on, stood at the microphone. But this time, she closed her eyes, took several deep breaths, let her shoulders drop, let the facade fall away. She thought about Chris, her ex-boyfriend, the one this song was about, the one who was 7 years older but acted like a child, who needed her to be strong, to take care of him, to be the adult in the relationship. She thought about how exhausting that was, how much it hurt, how desperately she'd wanted him to just take charge, just be the strong one, just let her rest. She thought about how ashamed she'd been of wanting that, how feminism said she should be strong and independent, how her friends said she didn't need a man, how she'd internalized that message so deeply that wanting to be taken care of felt like betrayal. But she did want it. God, she wanted it so badly. Wanted someone stronger, someone to lean on, someone to let her be weak and scared and vulnerable without judgment. That's what the song was about, that need, that desperate, aching need. "Ready," Amy said into the mic. Gary started the track. Take 48. The music came through the headphones, those familiar chords, that jazz intro. Amy opened her mouth and sang, and this time everything was different. Her voice was smaller, more vulnerable, less controlled. She let it shake on certain words, let it break on others. Didn't try to sound powerful or in control. She sang like someone who was tired of being strong, someone who needed help and wasn't ashamed to ask for it anymore. "You were the one that I always leaned on." The lyrics took on new meaning because Amy was letting herself lean, really lean, putting all her weight into it. In the control room, Salaam sat up straighter. This was it. This was what they'd been chasing for 8 hours. Gary stopped taking notes. Just listened. Amy kept singing, getting deeper into the emotional truth of the song, not performing vulnerability, actually being vulnerable. When she reached the chorus, her voice cracked with real emotion, not technique, not jazz affectation, just raw feeling. "Now I always have to comfort you when I'm there?" You get the feeling that you're not being a man, so you act like one whenever you can. She sang it with disappointment, with exhaustion, with the bone-deep weariness of someone who'd been carrying too much for too long. The bridge came. Amy's voice dropped even lower, more intimate, like she was whispering a secret. Are you gay? Just be a man about it. These lines were harsh, cruel even, but Amy sang them with such hurt underneath the anger. You could hear the betrayal, the desperation, the need for someone to just step up and be strong so she didn't have to be. The final chorus. Amy's voice opened up, still vulnerable, still honest, but with a strength that came from accepting her weakness, from admitting her need. The song ended. The last note hung in the air. Silence in the studio. Complete silence. Amy kept her eyes closed, didn't want to see their faces, didn't want to know if she'd gone too far, exposed too much, been too honest. Then Salaam's voice came through the headphones. That's it, he said simply. That's the one. Amy opened her eyes. Really? Really? Salaam was smiling. That was perfect. That was true. Amy felt something release in her chest. 8 hours of tension, 48 takes of trying, all of it leading to this one moment where she stopped hiding and just sang the truth. She walked out of the booth, back to the control room. Salaam played it back for her. Hearing it was different than singing it. Amy heard herself being vulnerable in a way she never allowed herself to be in real life. Heard the neediness, the weakness, the desperate desire for someone to be stronger. And it didn't sound pathetic. It sounded human. That's really good, Amy said quietly. Surprised, relieved. That's really honest, Salaam corrected. That's why it's good. They kept that take. Take 48, the one where Amy stopped protecting herself, stopped trying to hide her weakness, stopped being ashamed of needing someone. That's the version that made it onto the Frank album. That's the version that won the Ivor Novello Award for Best Contemporary Song. That's the version that introduced Amy Winehouse to the world. But nobody knew it took 48 takes. Nobody knew Amy spent 8 hours battling herself, fighting her shame, her fear, her desperate need to hide her vulnerability. Gary Noble remembers that session vividly. 15 years later, he'd talk about it in interviews. Amy was unbelievably talented, he'd say. But that day wasn't about talent. It was about courage, the courage to be vulnerable, to show weakness, to admit need. That's harder than hitting any note. The Frank album came out in October 2003. Stronger Than Me was the first single, released October 6th. It didn't chart well, peaked at number 71 in the UK, the lowest charting single of Amy's career. But it won awards. Critics loved it, called it honest, raw, real, and fans who heard it felt seen, felt understood, felt less alone in their own needs. Because Amy had been brave enough to be honest, to show her weakness, to admit she needed someone stronger. That vulnerability became Amy's trademark, her signature, the thing that made her different from every other jazz singer. She wasn't just technically brilliant, she was honest, painfully, devastatingly honest. That honesty came at a cost. Amy would struggle with it for years. The exposure, the feeling of being seen, the vulnerability of putting your deepest fears into songs that millions would hear. But that day in Miami, at Intina Creative Space Studios, surrounded by Salaam and Gary and the microphone and the truth, Amy learned something crucial. Vulnerability isn't weakness. Hiding is weakness. Protecting yourself from connection is weakness. Strength comes from admitting you need help, from asking for support, from allowing yourself to be seen in all your imperfect, needy, desperate humanity. Stronger Than Me taught Amy that, and it taught everyone who listened. The song wasn't about a weak woman needing a strong man. It was about the exhaustion of always having to be strong, the toll it takes, the damage it does, the basic human need for someone to share the weight. Everyone needs someone stronger sometimes. Everyone gets tired of carrying everything. Everyone wants to lean on someone and rest. That's not pathetic. That's human. Amy understood that after 48 takes, after 8 hours of struggling, after finally letting go of the shame and singing the truth. Salaam Remi would work with Amy for the rest of her life. They'd make Back to Black together, record dozens of songs, win Grammys, create some of the most memorable music of the 2000s. But he always said, Stronger Than Me was special, different. That was the day Amy learned to trust vulnerability, Salaam said in 2015. Everything else came from that, all the honesty in her later work, all the raw emotion. It started in that Miami studio when she finally stopped protecting herself. Gary Noble said something similar. Amy arrived that day as a talented singer. She left as an artist. The difference was vulnerability, the willingness to be honest, even when it hurts. The 47 takes before the final one weren't failures. They were necessary, part of the process. Amy had to work through her shame, her fear, her protective instincts. Had to exhaust all the ways of hiding before she could finally be honest. That's what real art requires, not just talent, not just skill, but the courage to strip away protection, to show the truth underneath, to be vulnerable even when every instinct screams to hide. Amy learned that at 19, in a Miami studio, recording a song about weakness, having to sing her way through 48 takes to find the courage to be weak. Years later, when Amy became famous, when Back to Black made her a star, when millions loved her music, she'd think back to that day, to the 8 hours in the booth, the 48 takes, the moment she finally stopped hiding. That's when she became Amy Winehouse, not when she got famous, not when she won awards, when she chose vulnerability over protection, honesty over image, truth over safety. The music industry would try to break that in her, would try to make her safe again, commercial, controlled, protected. But Amy never forgot that day in Miami, never forgot what happened when she stopped protecting herself, when she let people hear her weakness. That's when the magic happened. That's when art became real. That's when connection became possible. Stronger Than Me was just the beginning. Frank would have 12 tracks, each one brutally honest, each one exposing some part of Amy she'd rather keep hidden. Songs about bad relationships, about needing someone, about weakness and strength and the complicated space between. Amy recorded them all the same way, with painful honesty, with vulnerability, with the refusal to hide. Sometimes it took one take, sometimes it took 20. But every song required Amy to strip away the protection and show the truth underneath. That became her process, her signature, the thing that made her music unforgettable. She wasn't just singing songs, she was exposing her soul, piece by piece, song by song, note by note. And people heard it, felt it, responded to it, because everyone has parts of themselves they're ashamed of. Everyone has needs they're afraid to admit. Everyone wants to be seen but is terrified of being really known. Amy showed them it was possible, not easy, not safe, but possible, to be vulnerable and survive it, to show weakness and not be destroyed, to admit need and still be worthy. Stronger Than Me was more than a debut single. It was a mission statement, a declaration, a promise. Amy Winehouse would be honest, would be vulnerable, would show you everything, even the ugly parts, even the weak parts, even the parts she wished weren't true. That promise made her a star, but it also destroyed her, because that level of vulnerability is unsustainable. That much honesty is exhausting. That much exposure leaves no room to hide. Amy would spend the next 8 years trying to balance vulnerability with protection, trying to be honest without being destroyed by the exposure. She never quite figured it out. The vulnerability that made her art powerful also made her life unbearable. The honesty that connected her to millions left her feeling completely alone. But that day in Miami, recording Stronger Than Me, none of that had happened yet. Amy was 19, just starting, just learning, just discovering that vulnerability was her superpower and her curse. Take 48, the take where everything changed, where Amy stopped protecting herself, where weakness became strength, where honesty became art. Gary still has the original session files, all 48 takes. He's never released them, never shared them, keeps them private. Those first 47 takes belong to Amy, he said. Her process, her struggle, her private battle with shame. I was privileged to witness it, but it's not for the world. But he listens to them sometimes, late at night, when he wants to remember what real artistry looks like, what it takes, what it costs. He hears Amy in those early takes, technically perfect, but emotionally guarded. Hear her trying to hide, trying to protect herself, trying to be strong when the song required weakness. And then take 48, where everything changes, where the guard drops, where Amy lets everyone hear her need. That's the take that matters, not because it's more technically perfect than the others, but because it's true. And truth, Gary learned that day, is what makes art immortal. Not talent, not technique, not production value. Truth. Ugly, vulnerable, shameful truth. The truth we're all afraid to speak. The truth that makes us human. Amy spoke that truth, sang it, made it beautiful, made it matter. And it started with 48 takes, 8 hours, one song, one vulnerable confession. I need someone stronger than me. That admission cost Amy everything, her privacy, her protection, her ability to hide. But it gave the world something irreplaceable, a voice that told the truth, music that felt real, art that mattered. Take 48. That's where it began. That's where Amy Winehouse stopped being a talented singer and became an artist, in a Miami studio, with patient producers, after 47 failures, with nothing left to protect, nothing left to hide, just truth, raw and painful and beautiful and real. That's the story of Stronger Than Me, not the official version, not the polished narrative, the real story. 48 takes, 8 hours, one breakthrough, one 19-year-old girl learning that vulnerability isn't weakness, that honesty isn't pathetic, that showing your need doesn't make you less. It makes you human, it makes you real, it makes you matter. Amy learned that lesson in Miami in 2003, spent the rest of her life trying to live it, struggled with it, was destroyed by it, but never stopped being honest, even when the honesty hurt, even when the vulnerability became unbearable, even when the exposure left her raw and bleeding and desperate for protection. She kept singing the truth, kept showing her weakness, kept admitting her need, because that's what Stronger Than Me taught her. That's the promise she made on Take 48. No more hiding, no more protection, no more shame, just truth. However painful, however exposing, however vulnerable. That was Amy Winehouse from that day forward until her final breath. A voice that told the truth, a soul that refused to hide, a heart that chose vulnerability even when it destroyed her. It started with 48 takes, 8 hours in a Miami studio, one song about weakness, one moment of choosing honesty over protection. That moment defined everything that came after. Every song, every performance, every heartbreak, every struggle. Amy Winehouse. Vulnerable, honest, unprotected, real. Take 48. That's where it began. That's where the magic happened. That's where an artist was born, in the space between Take 47 and Take 48. In the moment Amy stopped hiding, in the breath she took before finally singing the truth. That's when everything changed. That's when Amy Winehouse became Amy Winehouse. If you or someone you love is struggling with vulnerability, shame, or the weight of always being strong, please know that asking for help is not weakness. Organizations exist to support you. Mental Health Support, UK Samaritans, 116, 123, US SAM-HSA National Helpline, 1-800-662-4357. The Amy Winehouse Foundation, www.amywinehousefoundation.org, supporting vulnerable young people in building resilience and self-esteem.